between the two, as long as a person stays away from the major sins. The interpretation of hadith that we want to highlight is the impact of one prayer takes you to the other prayer. You pray one prayer, you return back to the world, return back to your family, return back to your work. But the iman, it begins to go down slowly. But the adhan is given and your iman is lifted once again. That's the impact of one prayer to another prayer. Not that you offer the prayer and you forget about everything. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. The prayer takes you away from fahsha. Fahsha, loosely translated English language, sexual promiscuity, lewdness, wickedness, all types of immorality. Is a loose translation of fawahish, of fahsha. Wal munkar, and evil. That's the power of the prayer. Takes you away from lewdness, promiscuity, wickedness, evil. That's what the real salah does. The prayer of the believer takes him away from evil, takes him away from haram. As for many of us, the prayer will be thrown in our faces, come inside our graves in a wretched form, thrown inside our faces. Because for many of us, excuse the expression, all that we know is raful yadayn wa ta'min khalf al-imam. That's all that we know behind the imam. Amma the real understanding of salah, the real power of salah, the real movement of salah. No one's taking away the hadith from Bukhari. Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray if you've seen me praying. But what was the real impact of the prayer in the heart and the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Have we begun to develop that inside our life? Or is it just a tertiary concept? I do these actions that shows that I'm a person following this thought. It should be far deeper than that, the impact of the prayer. Likewise, find wal jum'atu ila jum'ati. The impact of the Friday sermon isn't until you walk out the doors. It travels with you all the way till Yawmul Khamis. The maw'idha, the admonition, the strong warning, whereby the Prophet Muhammad would raise his voice, his eyes would redden. That's how he give the impact towards his followers, as if it was his final admonition. Until you find wajilat qulub, the hearts begin to shake. Wadharafat uyun, the eyes begin to shed tears. That was the impact of the sermon of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. Remind them about the days of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remind them وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Fear that day whereby all of us will return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Suyuti mentions inside Al-Itqan fi Ulum al-Quran, فَهَذِهِ آخِرُ الْآيَةِ نُزِلَتْ عَلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. This is the final ayah sent down to the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. All of us should fear that day. We have to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no one will be oppressed on that day. That's the power of the admonition on Yawmul Jum'ah. So Yawmul Khamis comes. Once again in the morning, it's Yawmul Jum'ah. And likewise 29, 30 days of fasting. The impact of Siyam travels with the real believer. Not till the first day of Shawwal, all the way throughout the year until Sha'ban. Till the following Sha'ban. And when the Iman begins to weaken, the body goes back to eating, drinking, enjoying life in a normal pattern. What happens? Ramadan enters once again. Those are the people who benefited from Ramadan. As-sawmu junnatun. Sawm is a shield that protects you from the hellfire, not exposes you to the hellfire. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That you become muttaqoon. وَالتَّقْوَى أُخِذَ مِنْ فِعْلِ وَقَى. Taqwa has been taken from the verb waqa, means to create a barrier, a shield to protect yourself. You are protecting yourself from the fire of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want that protection to remain with you throughout the year. Those are the people who really benefited from the month of Ramadan. And likewise you find ilmul muhasabah, the science of accountability. Many of us Muslims, we forget. We bring one another to accountability. But how about what's been attributed to Umar? Hasibu anfusakum qabla an tuhasabu. Bring yourself to accountability before you're brought forth to accountability. Each and every single one of us Muslims should sit down and think, this previous Ramadan, may Allah forbid, was I a deceptive individual? So I need to make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Was I just the average Muslim who's beginning to boast about his or her actions? Or am I trying to become amongst those individuals who are excelling, trying their best? Did I read enough Quran? Did I pray appropriately? Did I live my life according to Sunnah? What can I do the following year? If it's destined for me to come to the following Ramadan, what steps am I going to make to better myself? Future planning isn't the way of the kuffar, disbelievers. That's the way of a Muslim, to look at the foresight, to look ahead. Even the day of judgment comes. Day of judgment comes, you have seeds inside your hand, don't throw them away. According to prophetic traditions, plant them inside the ground. Put them inside the ground, even the day of judgment comes. So to plan and to think ahead, is nothing wrong for a Muslim. If it's destined, it will come. If it's not destined, the person will be rewarded for the intention. That's what we need to begin to develop inside our lives. The foresight. How do I want to become a better individual? What steps can I take to become that individual? And that's where many of us, we fall short. We have no understanding what we want to do, what we want to gain in our life. We become haphazard. The masjid becomes haphazard. The community becomes haphazard. The whole of this Muslim ummah becomes haphazard. That's the reality. وَعِدُّ لَهُمْ مَسْتَطَعْتُ مِنْ قُوَّةٍ. We cannot prepare anything in steeds of warfare. Anything that we do, we're ill prepared inside our lives. That's why we need to begin to focus upon our lives. These people, the only reason they govern and rule over our countries, because of our weakness of da'ful iman, our lack of planning, our lack of understanding, our lack of ruju' ila al-Qur'ani wa sunnah. It took them not 1 day or 2 days. They spent 150 years breaking us apart. And we have to spend a long time building ourselves back once again. وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ. This is the one long path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A long tedious path. And we need to build brick by brick by brick, to strengthen ourselves once again. وَقُولُوا قَوْلِ هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهِ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَلِجَمِيعِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَاسْتَغْفِرُوهُ إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. وأصلي وأسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. These three group of individuals that we mentioned have been indirectly documented inside the Quran. فَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. The first group that we find, ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. Those people who oppress their own selves. Every time you sin, you make a mistake, you oppress your own soul. So those individuals who did not understand the intent of Ramadan, those people had the element of nifaq, of hypocrisy inside their hearts about this month of Ramadan, they've been oppressing their own souls. وَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ. And those who are on the middle path, the average Muslim, those Muslims who just like to show off about their actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want the average Muslim anymore. This ummah doesn't need the average Muslim. Just like in the world today, bank holiday Monday, double time, triple time, overtime that we find, every single Muslim will rush to do that. But when it comes to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we drag our feet. We drag our feet. We come to the state of salah, in a state of kusala. يُرَاءُونَ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Dragging our feet. It's time for salah again. Or people begin to look at their watches. 1 minute the imam's gone over. 2 minutes he's gone over Jummah time. That shows that element of nifaq, of hypocrisy inside our hearts. When it comes for 1 minute of overtime, we rush to overtime. Rush to the dunya, to gain the dunya. That's what we become, many of us, average Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want the average Muslim anymore. فَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبَرَ عُلُو الْعَزْمِ مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. Your level of patience, your level of conviction, of focus inside your life should become like ulul azm. The 5 great prophets that we find. Nuh, Musa, Ibrahim, Isa, wa Nabiyuna Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the path that we should be following. Look at their lives, of how they excelled, how they remain committed throughout their lives, not become the average Muslim. Then the third group of individuals, وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Those who are excelling in doing good deeds. via the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those are the individuals every single Muslim should strive to be like those individuals, racing towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, racing towards the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who in return Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them what? Gives them the reward of paradise, prepared for the believers, the pious individuals who strive towards paradise. That is the whole search inside Ramadan that we were searching for. The forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and deliverance from the fire. So likewise now outside this month of Ramadan, to take that iman, take that conviction throughout the following year if it's destined for us, throughout the rest of our life, that throughout our lives we're focusing, that give us that sweetness of iman, not just in the month of Ramadan but outside of Ramadan, and make us to die upon a state of conviction, of focus and commitment towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna Allah wa malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. قوموا لصلاتكم يرحمكم الله.